and Sustainable Development Goals. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar, Circular Fashion, the Future is Now. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube. Now, all of you must be aware, and even if you're not, you should be, that the fashion industry causes 10% of all greenhouse gas emissions, producing more emissions than all international flights and shipping combined, according to data from the United Nations Environment Program. Every second, one garbage truck full of textiles is burnt or sent to landfills. 3 in 5 items bought are thrown away within a year. Circular economy in the fashion industry is more important than ever. And even if fashion isn't one of your interests, it is undeniable that it has an impact on us all. What we wear says a lot about us, whether we like it or not. One of the biggest concerns in the fashion industry is fast fashion. Fast fashion is about making trendy clothes quick, cheap, and disposable. Fast fashion is a series of chain retailers who basically are able to look at the runways and make garments really quickly and put them into a see now, buy now kind of retail environment. So, what happens to these clothes? Where does it all go? How do we stop hurting the environment? Today, we will see how circular economy has the answers to these questions. Also, if any of the participants have anything to share about what you have done in circular fashion, and if you have made a difference, let us know in the chat box, and we'd love to give you a few minutes to share your story during the webinar. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please do post them in the chat box. Our first speaker for today is Dr. Shalini Sharma, who is the founder director of the Global Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals. Dr. Sharma is also the founder of Sanchodhan, an e-waste exchange that works for e-waste management and the development of zero-waste businesses and organizations. Dr. Sharma wanted to create an organized waste management infrastructure whose primary focus is to be user-friendly and accessible to help the citizens of India. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Vacu. Thank you so much. So what I'm going to do during this first presentation is just to set the challenge, what exactly we are doing in the field of circular fashion and what exactly others can do in the field of circular fashion. How it can be implemented, we will be taking it to the other speakers. I hope my screen is visible to everybody. So good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Shalini Sharma, welcoming you on behalf of the Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals. So today, the circular fashion is a matter of concern for the one reason, the huge amount of the use of plastic in creating the fast fashion clothing. Though it provides quite a number of jobs, it creates number of interest among the public. But on the other side, this has also created an issue for the land pollution, for the greenhouse gas emission and others. Let us see what is happening. Why should we care about the life cycle of the products like textile while the production, then clothing while the production, then dyeing, then processing of the clothing, then taking it to the distribution channels, then customers, they are using it. And at the end of life, where it goes, nobody knows. So actually, if the industries are taking care of their whole supply chain, right from the production to the end of the product, then it will be quite easily and it will be called as a sustainable fashion. But let's see what's happening as a reality on the ground. So plastic as a fast fashion. If you're seeing this picture, there's a huge amount of plastic, maybe around 50 to 60% of the plastic is PET, especially is used in producing this kind of clothing. On the other side, when we are seeing the use of plastic on clothes, towels, cushions, everything, the real issue is microplastic that is not really seen by the eyes. It's not visible to the eyes, but still it's creating a pollution that is harmful for us as an air pollution, as in water pollution. It leads to the rivers, and from rivers, it leads to the ocean. So somehow, if you see, there are various news that tell us that we are eating microplastic to the tune of around 15 to 20% into our foods, especially the people who are using seafood, they are especially exposed to this. Now, some of the publications, some of the organizations working across the world, they have turned the heads of the large number of fashion houses, saying that what really they are creating for the humanity on this earth. They also said that in the researchers, they proved that the enormous virgin plastic production is used, an amount of 63% of the material is used for the clothing. And this was a figure in 2015. Over the period, as the technology advancement is increased, the use of plastic in clothing sector has increased. What are the concerns? What's really happening on the ground? So there are various number of process taken care by the taken care by the textile industries. They are using plastic additives. They are using oxidants, dyes. Then these things are added to the micro fibers. Various chemicals and various colors that are released during the process that are going into the water and mind it. This kind of water, the colors that go into the water is really not having any kind of treatment. So colored water is not still having any treatment. So this is a big challenge that the textile industry is facing. And so the humanity. And then what's happening to the plastics in the cloth? They're plastic microfibers from the cloth, and then recycling is not the answer. These are the two key challenges. We don't say that don't use plastic into the clothes, but if the end of the life of product is taken care, then things can be done. But actually, this is not possible. Why? Because the advanced technologies for the recycling of textile are still not there. If you have heard about any of the clothing recyclers, we would be happy to have talked to them, in fact. There are other kind of hazards that are happening into this sector, like packaging plastic. So there are now the bottle shampoos, microplastics are used in this. There are lipsticks, mascaras, everything's, they are using huge amount of plastic over there. But actually, if you see, 10 to 17% is only the plastic that is recycled, and this is the aggregated data, average data across the world. What industry is doing? So what is happening all over the world? Now, if you see the clothes that are made from banana fibers that are coming in vogue, people are trying to use the natural fibers. Then there is another thing, coconut. The people are making the buttons out of it. Then there are replace plastic bottles. Some people, some companies, they are trying to replace the shampoo bottles by providing shampoo bars. But actually, do you see this as a new trend? Actually, it is not. Shampoo bars are common practice since 1990s. This has happened in last 10 to 12 years that people started plastic in such a huge amount in their houses. But actually, it was not there in 1990s and early 2000s. So what can we do as an individual? So we can reduce the clothes shopping. Don't get tempted for purchasing the clothes as soon as you see the new fashion there on the Amazon or Flipkart. Or if you are purchasing new clothes, please have a look on the life cycle of your existing clothes. Then next is what we can do is keep the cloth longer, shop consciously. Of course, we have talked about recycling as an opportunity for entrepreneurs. People who are looking for the job and who are willing to enter into entrepreneurship. I think textile recycling is one of the huge sector for the entrepreneurs to enter in. And today we are having one of the entrepreneur here with us. He will be sharing his case study with us here. What can be done further? We can cut back on the single-use plastic. Better to use the plastic that we can use again and again. PET is one of the good option because the recyclability of PET is very high. Then what government can do actually? The government can bring in the extended producer responsibility policy for the textile sector. This is a huge, huge sector and the government will also get benefited out of it. And then there should be an environmental compensation policy, especially for because this is a water intensive sector. And textile industry should be really compensating for the water they are using for this. So lastly, what else we are doing as an organization? Currently, we are working on the training of trainers on circular economy. Our focus is on the educational sector. We are doing training of trainers for educational sector 19 to 23 October. The batches are, the registrations are open. You can register if anybody is interested. We are also doing a training of trainers on the implementation of circular economy in SMEs, that is small and medium scale industries. So if there are any industries, small and medium scale industries from the textile sector want to enter into this training program, then the registrations are open and these trainings are scheduled. SMEs training is scheduled in November. You can just write to us and we will send the registration link. The best part is that there is no fee involved for this training program. These trainings are the free of cost, so you can utilize this opportunity. Other things, we are coming up with the awareness booklets on the ESG, because we are working with some of the industries and organizations on the ESG impact assessment, especially for the investors. And there are some exciting products for the organizations like who are willing to go zero waste. We do a handholding for them to turn zero waste, and then we provide them the certification when they meet the criteria of zero waste. And we are having another certification for the companies who are willing to move ahead from zero waste and they want to move a circular. So these certifications are for circular products, then circular institutes and organizations like NGOs, educational institutes and offices. And then these are the circular production units. So these are the 3 levels of certification we provide. And for sure, we provide a lot of handholding and support and guidance and training while doing this certification, going through the certification process. So thank you so much. And we look forward associating with you all. Feel free to write to us for any queries you have. Keep posting on the chat box also so that we will be able to reply to your questions. Over to Vaikom.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for the enlightening information about plastics and exactly what they're doing to us and our environment. And as Dr. Sharma said, if you have any questions or comments, please do put them in the chat box so we can get back to you about them. Now, our next speaker is Mr. Garvit Sadev. Mr. Garvit Sadev is the co-founder of InfiniteX, an organization that is bringing about one of the biggest systematic changes in the fashion industry. Mr. Sadev's organization not only sells sustainable clothes, but takes them all back as well. InfiniteX is leading a sustainable revolution in the fashion industry. Mr. Sadev believes in making sustainable fashion effortless, accessible, and non-compromising, and keeping the clothes at their highest possible value. Over to you, Mr. Sadev.
Yeah, thank you, Vegan. Thank you, Shalini, for that beautiful introduction about circular economy and what are the complexities which are involved in this. So I'll start with a little introduction of InfiniteX and what we're trying to do at InfiniteX regarding bringing circular fashion to India. So the history went back to when I was doing my research on circular fashion in India, and I found that there are multiple entities throughout the production value chain. So there are companies, there are brands who are manufacturing, upcycled clothing. They are manufacturing sustainable fashion. There are retailers who are selling these, sustainable fashion. There are recyclers who are collecting it back, and there are also technology companies who are making, chemically recycled fibers. But these entities are not collaborating, or the material is not, getting circulated in a foolproof manner. So that was the gap which we identified, and then we started InfiniteX with a, with a vision and mission that will take responsibility of, that will collect back every clothing and will ensure that this will not end up in landfill. Right. So whatever brands who are manufacturing, clothing, they can keep doing their work. Consumers can keep, using fashion and all. So these people need not to worry about that. We as an organization are taking that responsibility that for brands, for consumers, for recyclers, we'll ensure that everything is going smooth. Right. So I'll show back few insights which I got from my research. How we define circular fashion, and according to us, what could be the strategies for brands, especially, or different other entities to move from linear to circular fashion. So as shown by Shalini ji in the presentation itself, the starting circle itself, you can imagine the production cycle, the value chain of fashion. So just giving a minute on that, just to make up mind before I come to insights and strategies. So for me, production value chain is like, you have few companies who are manufacturing raw materials. So these could be organizations who are taking, cotton yarn and all. So that is, natural fibers. There could be some organizations who are manufacturing synthetic fibers. They are taking these raw materials from crude oil, etc. Right? So that is the first step of the value chain. Then the second step is when these raw materials are converted into garments, and that is a whole, wider value chain where you make yarns, you make fabrics, you process them, you finish them, and then you make different kind of garments, right? And then third level, there are brands who come and add value to the products in terms of functionality, uh, in terms of sustainability values, quality, aesthetics, and everything else, right? And then they retail these things to consumers. And then there is a retail chain between this digital retail chain, this physical retail chain, like that. And then there are consumers, settings of the world, consuming fashion, being happy about what they're wearing and all. And then there are these, mostly, especially in India, we donate, whenever we end up consuming our clothes. And then after that, most of these, things end up in land. A certain percentage of it is getting collected and is going to, recyclers or upcyclers, like that. But that percentage is very less. So if we see the value chain of fashion, this is, majorly happening here. So if we talk about each step of the value chain and how the brands present at the value chain, or the people who are interested to venture into that segment of value chain, what they can do to make this whole linear fashion value chain to, a circular fashion value chain. So starting with, again, the first point where these, brands are taking the new materials, new cotton fibers, new synthetic fibers, and these fibers are coming from, again, natural resources from our mother nature. That we keep on growing cotton, new cotton in the fields, and that is also very water intensive process, fertilizer intensive process. It has its own implications. Similarly, we keep on consuming new synthetic fibers, and we all know that plastic has, a very high lifetime value, lifetime, so it doesn't get degraded easily. Right? So we keep on consuming. So the first strategy for the brands is that, they start preferring the recycled or upcycled materials. So this is like, bending the line at the first step itself. When you start, taking these upcycled or recycled materials, you are increasing the demand for these recycled materials, in the market, allowing other people to do their business, in this direction. Then the second step is designing process. Now, if you see, like I'm wearing a t-shirt, right? It has multiple components. It's made of, stitching threads. There is a main fabric, then there is a chain, right? There could be some buttons also. So there are different components which are involved in, manufacturing a garment. And whenever brand is designing a garment, they should take care that, throughout rest of the value chain, it should be, easily either recycled, reused, like that. So for example, if I use, so this is just an example. So if I use only, cellulose based materials. So for example, only cotton based thread, right? Only cellulose based or wood based buttons, right? Or only cotton fabric. So when we talk about recycling, we can just take this t-shirt, we can dump it into a recycler, and we know that it's only cellulose, and we can get new fibers out of it. So this is how these brands at the designing step itself is making the whole transition from a linear to circular easy. Another intervention from brands could be that they could make these materials so strong, easily repairable, mendable, like that. They can be used for a longer period by individuals, right? So these are the few interventions which brands can have at the designing stage. Now coming to retailers, right? So we all know that now we are moving towards that online B2C world where we can use a technology, we can generate website, we have access to consumers who are living pan India or pan world, their addresses and all everywhere, right? So we have that database. Now it's a time for these brands, or to move to that strategy. We say that okay, we are retailing for return, right? So we know that we are retailing to either Venkutji or Shalini ji, right? And now we can know that okay, Shalini is owning that t-shirt or that clothing. So we know that okay, we can take that back. So that is another strategy which the retailers can do, and Infinitex is kind of experimenting this for the first time in India, where we're saying that okay, we'll take back every clothing which is sold to our platform. After that, you might see a lot of Instagram pages around thrifting and all, right? Swapping, renting, right? E-commerce. So all these things can be clubbed into a strategy where you say that you are prolonging the usage of a garment. So just imagine, for making a garment, you have invested a lot of resources in terms of energy, in terms of manpower, in terms of uh, materials also. And this whole value chain has its own impact in terms of carbon footprint, water footprint, like that. So you got to wear a garment after so much impact, right? And just imagine that you wear that garment for a month or for a season itself, and then you dump it off, right? So this is a huge blunder which we are doing with the Mother Earth, right? And if we can do anything for prolonging that usage period, that would be very useful, right? So even if we use a garment instead of just for one season, we can prolong it for like 5 6 seasons very easily, right? The strength will not lose. So if we are making any business models which can enhance the prolonged usage of these things, so that could be another strategy where people can venture into, and brands can also start doing this. So you might see a lot of international brands now starting e-commerce, right? That is also a great thing. You might see a lot of Instagram pages or even physical meets where people do swapping, people do thrifting and all, right? So these are all strategies where we are extending the usage period of a garment. And after that, I think once a garment loses its strength, we need to take it back. We need to take it back and channelize it to right partners. For example, recyclers or upcyclers, where they can, recycle or bring this whole thing or garment or material into value chain. Right. So here, I think take back programs does a great work where people know that okay, these people are owning such kind of garments, and if we can bring them together at a place, then we can sort them very easily and manage them very easily, right? But if these garments keep lying to so much that big population, and you want to manage them, it will not be a possible thing, and most of these things will end up in land, right? So again, take back programs from brands becomes very important at that stage. And last, I think, is a renewal of material. I think Shalini has included that into presentation as well. That there is a huge scope in recycling of materials, right? There is a huge work which is going internationally around recycling of materials, recycling of cotton to make new cotton fibers, chemical recycling. So this is not a just downcycling process. You will create a grade material after recycling, and you can use them into brand new fibers. So Circulose is an example, right? And many other organizations are working on that. So I think such kind of interventions across value chain can help us to move towards circular fashion in a together, in a collaborative way. If you are thinking that only one person or one entity or only one stakeholder can do it, I think that is not a possibility. We all have to come together, to move forward in the circular direction. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sadeh, for telling us about how it's so important to switch from a linear model to a circular model to really combat how our usage of plastics is really destroying the earth in so many ways, and there are so many ways to deal with it. So thank you so much for telling us about that. Our next and last speaker for tonight is Miss Anjali Schiavina. She is the national coordinator for the Fair Trade Towns India and is leading the fair trades movement in India. Ms. Schiavina is uh, known to practice socially conscious business and has since invested time and resources to do business in a way that creates environmental change and social and economic impact for everyone. Apart from leading the fair trades movement in India, Ms. Schiavina also founded Mandala Apparels in 2002, a company powered by a strong commitment to sustainability and women empowerment. Over to you, Ms. Schiavina.
Thank you very much for having me over, and it's a real honor for me to be here, sharing my experience in fair trade and as well as in the circular economy through my presentation.
Yes, you have sharing rights with you. You can share the screen.
Okay.
Yes, we can see your screen now.
How do I put it on a full screen?
You just hit F11 and it should go to full screen now. Uh, if it doesn't, it should be in view, under view as well.
So thank you very much for having me on board and giving me the opportunity to speak about fair trade and circular design in the fashion industry. We all know that fashion is one of the highest pollutant in the various industries that are there in the world. And if we see, the largest contributor in India's export is nearly 30.5% of garments in the total export of 42.2 billion. So it's a very, very huge amount. And today's linear make and dispose model in the fashion industry is really focusing on large quantities of cheap and easily accessible materials and energy. It is not considering the damage that it is doing in the environment as well as socially. And if we continue like this, we can see that, with the population that is going to exceed 8.5 billion people, the global garment production will increase by 63% by 2030. And thus the damage, one can imagine when we see all the damage that is happening already. But sustainable practices, all brands today are recognizing that sustainable on the environment as well as on impact in the textile. It believes that sustainability or circular economy is very, very expensive. But on the contrary, if we in the supply chain, and if we see the supply chain, we do notice an incredible gain financially as well as in the resources that is available to us today. Brands today are understanding this and are getting aligned to the SDG goals, which are actually a universal call to action. And the action is to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. The fashion brands do understand that this is the real need of the hour, and they also feel that it has to be done as a collective. It is an initiative that can happen and have success only if brands come together along with their supply chains as well as their consumers. So it is a collective movement to go forward from where they are today. Fair trade has, and the sustainability priorities that we have seen across the fashion industry today, they work on three pillars, which is the environment, social well-being, and economical well-being. So if you see in the environment, when we're talking about planet, what are the areas that circular fashion or even sustainable fashion is focusing on, is how to see we can reduce waste, how we can improve on alternate energy consumptions, how do we see better technology for reducing water, and how, last but not least, do we see fashion not being filling our landfills, but seeing how we can reuse, upcycle, or expand the life cycle of our garment. If we take it from a social point of view, it is so important to ensure that we are doing training and capacity building, gender equality, health, and personal engagement. What is also very important in circular economy, or especially with the fashion industry, is one cannot go without the other. They're all interlinked, they're all coming together, and they all come together, and that is where the circularity happens. So, how, again, this is how to reduce waste, how to increase usage of recycled raw material in production. How do we increase awareness, not only with the consumer, but also how do we increase awareness within the supply chain, because there is a lot of wastage that happens also pre-production. as well as post-production. What are the steps that we can put in practice, whether it is pre-production or post-production, to monitor and reduce the waste of energy? How can we increase the alternate sources of energy within our supply chain and within our infrastructure structure? What also, when we talk about fashion, there are few areas that the designers, the brands, as well as the manufacturers will need to start focusing on, and they are focusing on. One is, a lot of R&D on sustainable fabrics that are different in their weaves, techniques, workmanship, as well as in their textures. It is also important to see the life cycle of the garment for industrial upcycling. What we also need to focus on is, what do we do with the cut waste that happens in the factory level? Can that be upcycled? Can that be reused? And it's also our focus as brands or as fashion designers or as even producers today, because we are the enablers between the brands and the supply chain, is to see how we can improve efficiency, whether it is in the resource, whether it is reuse in the waste, and how zero waste collections that can be created to ensure that the landfill, a lot of the waste is not reaching the landfills. And this can happen only when the designers take awareness, the designers take responsibility of ensuring that along with the brands and their sustainability managers, they look within the supply chain as well as the life cycle of the garments. For example, if we see in fair trade, there is one of the principles of fair trade is respect for the environment. And if you see, how do we link it to the fashion industry? Can we use different materials? Can we use organic cotton? Can we use recycled polyester? Now we have even recycled cotton. We have lensing. We have blends of polyester, PET polyester blends, and various other sustainable fibers. There is also a feeling that when we use these sustainable fibers, it is not fashionable. But the image that you see in the presentation, it is a recycled polyester, PET polyester, but made into a very, very fashionable garment. So it's something that can be worn and be mainstream as well. Say no to zero waste. I mean, there are today a lot of brands who are working with zero waste collections. So they're seeing how they can work from the design, how they can be different from the design, and ensure that that garments and the collections that they make are zero waste. There are also other brands we see that who are focusing on upcycle. So they take pre-production waste bits, and with that they make fashionable clothes. So this is all about ensuring that the waste from pre-production is taken into account and not thrown again into the nature or into landfills. Now, a lot of focus has been going into the packaging industry as well. So if you, what is happening is factory waste is going into making paper. So you can make recycled paper hand tags. A lot of the fabric waste is going into making, the hang tags or even the labels. So this is an area of focus where a lot of brands today and even manufacturers are focusing on to see how can we make the accessories, how can we make the trims, how can we make the packaging material also aligned to sustainability and to the circular fashion design. Another thing that is now picking up a lot in the industry is about reclaimed cotton. So what happens is when a consumer has used their garment and they're throwing it into the landfill, those garments are brought back, shredded, made into yarn. The yarn is not perfect, but then they blend it with a little bit of virgin yarn to make the quality much better. But this then uses less water, and there is also less process of dyeing because the fabric is already dyed. So these are the other ways in which today fashion industry is also taking more responsibility in becoming sustainable as well as circular in their trends. As a fair trade manufacturer as well as a campaigner for fair trade, we notice that, the values that are there in fair trade embrace the social and the economical welfare of the workers, the farmers, and the um, artisans who are there who make our garments. And when we talk about circular, we cannot exclude the social angle. It is very important to embrace the social as well as the environmental. And that's when we are looking at circular design in its complete and whole, uh, in its integrity. It is not in piecemeal that we are looking at things. And also, if you see the fair trade, what it talks about is equal rights for women and men. It looks at opportunities for disadvantaged producers. How can we create, better livelihoods? If you see, for example, when you're working with organic cotton, it focuses on creating food security for the farmers. It focuses on ensuring that, they're working with seed cotton. So these are also, again, ways in which the sustainability angle is brought into the fashion industry and within its supply chain. When we talk about livelihood and social improvement, training and capacity building is a very, very important factor, because it improves lives and it improves the lifestyle of the employees. It enables their children to get a better education and thus improving their life going forward. So there are various values that are embraced when we are talking about circular fashion and design within the sustainability space. Capacity building, as I said, it helps to improve the lives of the people. Another very key, let's say, value that is there in the transparency and accountability is of supply chain. In this image that you will see below, it is showing the farmer, it is showing the ginning and the spinning, it is showing the manufacturer, and we can see the buyers standing at the cotton field of the farmer. Now, what this shows is a very, very great level of transparency. This is something that is very rare in the conventional business of the textile industry, where the manufacturers own the supply chain, or they have a monopoly on the supply chain, and the supply chain is not really shared transparently with the customer. By doing this, it gives the customer a lot of trust, and it also, when a brand is working towards sustainability and wants to speak about it to its consumers, it gets more confidence, and they can speak more confidently because they know from where their cotton or from where their raw material is coming, which is an important confidence level today for all brands who are trying to step into sustainability and into circular design. We also see that, within factories or in farmers, when we are talking about fair trade, it's about, creating awareness, whether that is creating awareness with the workers in workplaces, or it is about creating awareness within consumers. So a fair trade, what is actually fair trade? It's about a dialogue, it's about transparency. Its focus is on seeing how we can improve lives, how we can elevate poverty, how we can strengthen communities and protect the environment as well. So coming back a little bit to the fair trade towns, the fair trade town movement was launched in Gastank in 2001. The core principle of the fair trade towns movement is to engage actively with consumers, businesses, educational institutes, local groceries, cafes, restaurants. So it is about actually creating an awareness with the consumers so that they understand the importance and they can bring in their strength of consumption to support the producers and ensure that they get a fair price for their product. Is how do we create an awareness to a consumer? I'm just sharing a campaign that we did. It has got nothing to do with fashion, but what it shows is that if the people decide, they can bring change. And here is a small example. During COVID in Fair Town, our vision is a dynamic and thriving fair trade towns movement that promotes sustainable development, resulting in an inclusive India. So thank you so much once again for having me on this platform, sharing my experience about sustainability, fair trade, and circular design in fashion.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us so much information about the various ways that circular fashion and it can actually be approached. It's not just about it's not just about the material, but it's also about the people as well. Everyone who's involved in it and awareness and everything you've told us was so enlightening. And I'm sure everyone present here has learned so much. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Now, in the chat box, we have one question from Shweta. She is asking, currently in India, how many cloth or textile recyclers are there, and can we have some of their contact information? So I think anyone who would like to answer that would be great.
I can go first. So I think I have not till now found any kind of list where we can see that these are the recyclers or upcyclers in textile, right? But in the last, I think 1.5 year, since like Infinitex also partners with recyclers or upcyclers as circularity partners, so we were trying to reach out to different brands. I think I can share that list with. One of the few names which I remember is like Trove is a brand from Kolkata. I think they are into recycling and making new clothes out of waste. Then there is Binish Desai, who is also called Recycle Man of India, but he's not just into recycling of textiles, but also recycles a lot of material and again add value. Right, so these are the few names which I can recall immediately, but I can share a list later.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And
I could add to that maybe.
Yes, definitely.
So, in Tirupur, there are some suppliers who are doing, in Tirupur, there are some suppliers who are garments which are then shredded and converted into yarn. So there are few suppliers. One of them is Anandi Enterprises that definitely does a lot of work. They also do a lot of work with banana fibers, so you could approach them as well. And similarly, in North India, there are people who are working in recycled PET fabric. So unfortunately, being in the mainstream, maybe their volumes will be too large, but definitely they are now understanding the cues because they are the ones who are taking the bold.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So Shweta, I hope you got the answer that you were looking for. And I think that's those are all the questions we had. So before I end this session, I'd like to say on behalf of the Global Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals, thank you to our speakers, Ms. Schiavina and Mrs. Sadev, for your valuable time and highly educational and thought-provoking sessions and everything you've told us about circular fashion. And of course, I'd like to thank the participants for spending your time with us. And I really, really hope that this webinar gave you something to think about. So before we end, I'd just like to remind you to be responsible and think before you buy and dispose of clothes. Thank you so much once again for being a part of Circular Fashion. The future is now.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank